So good to hear. Thank you, Phil. Phil Cooklin. Fill my cup. Good morning. Good morning. It's time to stop my yawning. Got a fill my cup message from Phil this morning. What a lovely way to start the day. He is using the bicycling metaphor about how we get along in life, and comparing and contrasting that to how we learned to ride a bike as kids. Bobby, good morning to you. Yes, the agony of the football last night. I happened to catch the end of the match, which was by far the most exciting, dramatic, and stressful part of the match, I think. If you've got that stored and you're watching it today, I won't spoil that for you. But what a match between Benfica and Barcelona. Watched in the local cafe last night. I went to pick up the family from the local cafe. We were watching the storm in the bay. More to say about that in the weather section. Oh, Bobby, still not over it. Benfica fan, of course. Sorry, mate. I'm so sorry for not sending you those messages last night. What a match. Yeah, I'm sick as a dog here about that result. Yeah, I mean, like I say, I won't spoil it, but what an incredible game of football. And it got the whole attention of everybody in the cafe. Obviously, as usual in the Portuguese cafe, football fans in there watching the match. And very interesting in Portugal how gentlemen will take their ladies out for the evening to watch a football match. Let's go out and have a little bit of something to eat, maybe a drink at the local cafe. Oh, that sounds nice. And then they sit there and the fella watches the football while mum does a Sudoku or whatever. But everyone got into it. By the end of the match, everybody was I was shouting. In there, the foreigner was shouting. And my kids were like, what's he doing? I just couldn't help get drawn into the excitement. What a game. And yeah, sorry, Poppy, that it didn't go in quite the way you might have hoped. Jackie, good morning to you. Oh, and good morning to you, T-Duck as well. Bon dia, alegria, Gumpers. Is it yellow? It's an orangey heart, isn't it? Or citrusy heart of Portugal there. Morning, Mike, as well. Thank you for your contributions on the show last night. That's what Jackie's referring to as well. It was a busy and popular one last night with Munson and the Geezer. And we had the Geezer turning up in full MAGA regalia last night. And he faced a little bit of stick, didn't he, on screen? Quite rightly so as well. Bon dia, Gumpers. Sorry, I missed the show last night, Carl. Well, it is available. That's the beauty of this technology, Jackie. I would recommend, of course I would, watching it again. But it was particularly good fun last night. I'm having a bit of a giggle as Mark Safe from the Trump inauguration. That was the theme last night. Show 17. Had a great time. And thanks, Tony, as well, for joining us after at the Portugal Club for a little chat about our event, our gig that's happening on the 15th of February, Valentine's weekend. Please come over to San Martino de Porto to enjoy Valentine's weekend. Fellas, take your lady to the cafe. There's probably a great football match on. Of course, ladies taking ladies, fellas taking ladies. Whatever your love arrangements, come over to San Martino de Porto on the 15th of February. And it happens to be, it's a beautiful sandwich of debauchery because it happens to be the weekend of the Caldas da Rainha Beer Festival as well. So Saturday and Sunday, Caldas da Rainha Beer Festival by day, Saturday night at the Casa de Lem, the Wheelhouse Cocktail Bar. We were talking last night about our plans to have a PA karaoke disco. Colin's got a few jokes. Gav and the Geezer are going to do a little bit of live entertainment as well. It's going to be great fun. So really looking forward to that. Let's crack on with the Bon Dia Daily then. A bit of news, weather, and language and culture. I'm going to keep the news part fairly brief because it keeps squeezing the other parts, doesn't it, of well-being. Got an interesting little well-being tip for you this morning. I bought 50 litres of water last night, having to replenish my supply that I used last week after the water got cut off. Yeah, have we been through that story yet? It's going to be in the paper on Thursday in the Portugal Resident. But yeah, let's crack on and do a nice little weather bit. You saw Cop Shots was the name of the or the headline for the news today. Look at that fantastic photo there. There's one of the Cretos. Well, what are they? They're one of the great emblems of northern Portugal, are they not? It must be. Are we coming up to that event? And that particular brilliant photograph from. Well, that's what we're making the news focus this morning. I'll give you a bit of a backstory on there. The Carreto hasn't been arrested. And it's interesting, isn't it? It's like weapons through the ages as well. I think the Carreto carries a wooden stick, by way of I don't know, defending themselves. And also, I think part of the tradition is to tap members of the opposite sex on the bottom to show interest with a wooden stick. Things have come on a little bit, I suppose, haven't they? Now we've got Tinder and Grindr. Well, but still, that tradition is being upheld in northern Portugal. But that's not the reason why that carreto is on the back of a police bike. The reason for that is this is the Europol photography competition of 2024. And the PSP has the privilege. This is from the Facebook page of the PSP, one of Portugal's three main police forces here. The PSP has the privilege of announcing its participation in Capture 24. You see what they did there? Capture 24. It's a police thing and it's a photography thing. Capture, Europol's annual photography competition, winning the public vote category with the photograph of Chief Sarah Teixeira, who currently works at the PSP in Bragança. And the competition is open to police officers from all member states of the EU, aiming to praise and promote the work of police forces. Excellent shot by Sarah Teixeira there of the carreto on the back of the police motorcycle. Isn't that a fantastic photograph there? And I'll pop that up in the Portugal Club timeline a little bit later on, so you can look at that and a connection to the story as well. So that's a lovely, nice little bit of news and insight into Portuguese culture as well. So I'll come back to that. Morning to you, John, as well. Thanks for joining us. Bom dia, Portugal. Not a brrr dia, Portugal, it would appear. It's much milder, isn't it? Nicer. I mean, there's a lot of water in the atmosphere at the moment. Get those humidifiers on. Spark up the humidifiers, everybody. It's very humid and wet here on the Silver Coast, of course, but it is 14 degrees. It's so nice to get up without it being sort of brass monkey type weather. If that means something to you, I don't know. Bon dia Gumpers from Mike as well. Yeah, good fun last night, Mike. Thank you for your contributions. And when I was trying to explain when you were saying when you were using the classification hypocrite, and then I think you wanted to make it clear that you were talking about Trump and not the Tony the Portuguese. And I was going to make some comic material of that. I don't think Tony would mind being called a hypocrite, but we never got round to clearing up. And I don't think he's got a pretty broad back. I don't think you offended him. I think you're going to have to try harder, basically, next week. Right, let's get into some Portuguese language and culture. I think the emphasis probably on culture, but there will be some language in here as well. And this is how to order coffee in Portugal. And we've got a whole resource over there at the Good Morning Portugal Club under our Good Morning Portugal food, wine and fun times section in the classroom. All sorts of goodies. Look at this: foodie experiences, Portuguese food, Portuguese spirits, wines, recipes, etc., etc. This is a strong part of Portuguese culture, of course. But I want to draw your attention because I was in a cafe yesterday. Well, not any old cafe. The cafe I love to go to after the show, and have myself a galão and an empada de frango, my chicken pie. Now, the coach was talking about chicken pie. Bom dia, Gumpers. If feliz carta, a quiet day for Team Turner, though I do have a chicken and ham pie to make later. Send pictures for us to drool over. Enjoy your day, whatever you've got planned. Yeah, so after the show, I do like to get over to the Markel Cafe, just above the market, the Mercado here in San Martino de Porto. Have a galão, have a flaky puff pastry chicken pie. Bobby, you would approve, I think, of the pastry as a baker back in the day and as a man who loves to make food. I think you'd like the pastry. Oh, I'm just thinking about it now. It's making me hungry and salivate. Morning, Gary. Good to see you here this morning. Thank you for joining us. Bon dia all from you. And it's 12 degrees. I will come back to the weather there. Thank you for that. Heffalumps. What? Right. So, yeah, my galão and my empada de frango. That is my ritual after the show. Maybe grab some the best croissants in town up there at the Markel Cafe just above the market. And when I was in there yesterday, I saw the one of the girls in there making a pingado. I didn't know it was a pingado, but I could see that she was making a coffee in an espresso-sized cup. Oh, by the way, did you see my rather plaintive show description today? I think it's something like politics, business, money and power. Make it make sense. Who better to talk about that than the doc from the political angle, of course. And Stuart Noakes from Canopy as well. He's bringing a new entrepreneur over to Portugal. It's always great to speak to him and to speak to the guests that he brings along as well. Somebody new to Lisbon in the entrepreneur space. Anyway, that's 8:20 and 8:40 respectively. Anyway, back into the cafe, and I'm seeing one of the young ladies there make a pingado, which you'll see on the right of your screen here is the espresso shot. This, I would love to give full credit to whoever, the graphic designer who made this lovely chart here, as we do our best to bring you some culture and language here this morning on the Good Morning Portugal show in the Bom Dia Daily section. But when I looked for it, these are graphics, and there are some really good ones about. These are lovely posters, of course, to have in your house, and a great insight into Portuguese culture and language, of course, because you're gonna hear some Portuguese words here that are very useful in other contexts as well. Light, for example, and cheirinho too. But there I was, and she was pouring an espresso, small cup, of course, over on the second row here on the right-hand side. And I was thinking, what's that? There's an espresso being the espresso's been made, and she's pouring in some hot milk onto the top of it. And it just out of nowhere, it came to mind that it was a pingado, and I thought I better check that, and we can talk about that on the show in the morning. That'll be nice. So it's a hint of milk. If you like an espresso and you want to take the bitterness away, and you just like a little bit of a little dollop of foam on top of that. Now that, of course, is a doppiata in Italian. I can't remember now, or what you might ask for in America or the UK. But here in Portugal, that would be the pingado. So let's go back to the beginning and the top here, top line. And the basic unit of all coffees, of course, that are made would be the café, un café or a bica in other parts of the country, and a cimbolinha I think, as well up in the north, right? Bica, I think, in Lisbon, cimbolinha in Porto in the north, and café, basically. Queria um café, faz favor. I'd like a coffee, please. Queria um café. And that's what you're going to get your espresso shot, top left-hand corner. Tell me, of course, what your favorite is. I used to drink a lot of meia de leites when I first arrived here, and now I tend to go for either a cafe after my meal or a galão before, if I'm having a breakfast coffee, like the Italians do. The Italians, and I'm surprised to see a cappuccino on here, I must say. I don't think the cappuccino really is part of Portuguese. It's a concession, isn't it, to the foreigners, but it's not really a Portuguese coffee. Your galão is like your latte, and your meia de leite is your closest to your cappuccino, but more about that later. The basic unit of them all, of course, is the café. Queria um café if you want your straight shot. If you want two shots, you'll be asking for a duplo, which is fairly straightforward, isn't it? Double, duplo. And you can see that. Actually, this is making me somewhat desirous as well, looking at this. Last night, words that I've learned this week. Cupidity is greed, a sort of desirous greed, I suppose. Cupidity, I'd not heard of that. I thought it was a typo at first. Thank you, crypto strategists, for that. And copacetic. I've heard of that in a rap tune, I think, before, but I didn't know what it meant. Copacetic and cupidity. Copacetic, I think, meaning all in order. That's what we're trying to do here with teaching you, sharing with you the information about Portuguese coffees. Such an important part of the culture, of course, going to the cafe, having a coffee. The duplo is your double shot espresso. Your carioca is not to be confused with a karaoke, or is your karaoke. Carioca is the second press. Now, by that, I'm assuming that it goes through once to make the cafe. And no, that's right. It's a second. There's only half a cup there. So it's not a duplo made of 1.5 shots or a full strength shot and then a half strength. This is, I guess, for somebody who doesn't want quite as a strong or bitter or powerful a coffee. And the first, if this might be a Jack Sprat and his wife coffee scenario here, first press for one of the partners, and then a second press. Do it again, press the button again, push the water through for a second weaker press. That's the carioca, if you want one of those. It's seconds, isn't it, really? It just seems to me a little bit... I think there are better ways of weakening a coffee, aren't there? Like the Americano, possibly. Anyway, if you don't want caffeine, that's fine here in Portugal as well. Excuse me. Descafeinado would be a decaf. Descafeinado. Descafeinado is the word for decaffeinated here in Portugal. And café con cheirinho. I hope you're learning something, even if you do know all these words already. There's probably something on this chart that's new to you. And I like how this is color coded. The only coffee here with alcohol in it, the yellow on the graphic is the Café com Cheirinho, which is a strategic coffee. Some Portuguese gentlemen have this first thing in the morning. Others, Jace, I was looking through some of the excellent conversations we've had about coffee over at the Portugal Club. And Jason, who was on the show yesterday, of course, is saying, yeah, after working on the land, it's a lovely pick-me-up, the Café com Cheirinho. Pop down a cafe on your tractor, ask for a Café com Cheirinho. It means a sniff. A cheirinho is like a snifter. A shot of aguardente, probably, rather than asking for brandy. But if you ask for a cheirinho, the cafe owner will know exactly what you mean. Café com Cheirinho, then, with a shot of alcohol in it. The galão, my current favorite, and what I like after the show of a morning galão, approximating to the latte coffee. And the worst thing about the latte here in Portugal, as it is, I think, universally in the world, is the stupid cups it gets served in. Who on earth decided? I know we'll make a milky coffee, volcanically hot sometimes, and then we'll put it in a tall glass that's tapered upwards, so its center of gravity is ridiculous, and then we'll put it on a saucer that doesn't fit. We'll chuck a couple of sachets of sugar on there and a massive long spoon to get caught on the back of someone's coat as you're making your way to your chair. So that's likely to get spilt, isn't it? At some point, either with the coffee maker putting it on the countertop, you carrying it back, or it being brought over on a tray, and then getting it it's like a Houston, we have a problem. We are ejecting the coffee from the tray onto the table. Oh dear, we got a problem, Houston. It's fallen over. Its center of gravity was ridiculous. Now I like this. Sorry, did I start to shout then? I like this in the squatter, shorter, almost like a water tumbler, not the great big silly tapered cup that you see with lattes around the world. So I much prefer it if it's in a small Duralex. Yes, I said Duralex tumbler type cup. Yeah, a bit higher than your normal coffee cup, but not a silly center of gravity. But there you go. We've got the galão, which is kind of like a latte, but it's not the same. It really isn't the same. The pingado that we talked about before, the meia de leite, which is half milk. Meia de leite, half milk, half of the milk there. Half espresso, half milk in there as well. I think you're looking for, yes, that is a café really, isn't it? I think the espresso has been, with the meia de leite, the espresso has been, I think, pressed a little bit longer. So there's a little bit more coffee volume in there, and then half milk as well, as the name suggests, meia de leite. Your Americano, a batonado. I would like to see that called here. That would be a little bit of feedback for the graphic designer and translator. A batonado would be your Americano. 2/3 water, 1/3 espresso, topped up with hot water there. And we don't need to speak about the cappuccino. Get thee back, you cappuccino, and you'll see a funny thing, which I can't possibly read out, but thanks to Katia Lima, who contributed to our coffee drinking resources over there, which I think is not so much about the cappuccino, but more about the people who want to order a cafe latte here. It is a galão, as you are told in no certain terms, with that graphic on the screen there. So there you go. There. Oh, less milk if it's an escura. This is great. Thank you, Mr. S, for your additional resources on this. We'll take a quick look at the weather because we've got the doc ready and waiting for us. Borodar. The Welsh connections continue. Isn't that amazing? We have a bit of Scottishness in just a moment with the Thompson. My favourite, João Ernesto says, is the meia de leite duplos. Okay, double shot meia de leite. Ooh, very good. Getting into the culture there. Meia de leite escura. So faz favor. Yeah, less milk if it's an escura. This is great. Thank you for the additional input on this. And yes, as Mr. S, escura is right. But I also want the size of a galão. Who doesn't like the size of a galão first thing in the morning? Let us then take a very quick look at the weather. The Spartan FX weather. I was thinking to myself, why don't we do a currency weather metaphors? Beginning, currency is like the weather because, well, certainly yesterday I said because it tends to change from day to day. There you go. You can get a free copy of the Moving Money to Portugal guide made by Spartan FX for us. And we're looking here at the weather in Lisbon now, 16 degrees the high, and it's there already, actually. The maximum temperatures have been reached in most parts of the country. It is not my pleasure to tell you today. However, it is 16 degrees and it's rainy. in the capital, and it looks set for rain for the rest of the week everywhere, folks. So sou'westers, phallus-handled umbrellas from Caldesh Terrania. It's your chance to get that in your hand. Mrs. M gave out a couple of them at Christmas time. So we want to see our friends who have those jaunty, eccentric umbrellas using those, your guarda-chuvas using those. If we bump into you in the street in San Martin de Porto on the Silver Coast. Porto, similarly, 14 degrees. It's reached its high. Light rain today in Porto. Rain all week. Coimbra Central, 16 degrees and 12 degrees currently. 16 the high, 12 degrees currently. Light rain in Coimbra. And Faro even, 18 degrees. Broken clouds, going to be some rain there. And in Braga, light rain already. 13 the high, currently 12, and yes, rain for the rest of the week. This can change, of course, just like your currency can at any given moment. And that's your weather in the principal parts of the country. One quick thing before we before we switch to Good Morning Portugal programming with the doc in just a moment. And Stu Noakes, oh, look at this. He's lifting 10 kilos to start the day. That's a well-being gesture in its own right. Had to use much of the water supply. I don't know if I can hold it. I had to use much of the water supply last week when our water got cut off. And now I'm replenishing our apocalyptic prepper store water. It came in useful last week, it has to be said. This, however, is going to be very easy to store, much easier than the plastic bottles we had. And I prefer the idea that our water storage for our emergency supply is in foil, although I'm guessing aluminium is not the greatest contribution to human health, is it? But anyway, we shall see. 10-litre eco pack made by Monchique. The well-being part of this is that it is 9.5 pH. It's unusual in that it's an alkaline water. And I think we could do with a bit of alkalizing from time to time with our acidic diets and lifestyles. I wonder what the doc thinks about that. Acidity, alkalinity, etc., etc. Let's bring him on. Hola, bom dia.
Hola, bom dia, tudo bem?
Muito bem, obrigado. What do you make of that, Doc? Was it just a faddy thing when people started to talk about alkalinity in diets and lifestyles?
No, it's important if you look at the health effects of pH. I mean, the important thing is not to go too far either way, of course. And unlike
Balance,
politics,
moderate. Hey!